This is a test. We're testing. So talk how loud you're going to talk.
Test.
Testing.
Testicles.
1, 2, 3. Okay, that's what that sounds like.
Okay.
Hello, dig for bones.
I don't think anyone knows that I'm the one cut off your toes and put them in the drawer with the sock.
Hello, and welcome to the Least Haunted Podcast, a place where science, skepticism, humor, and anthropology meet to discuss all things spooky, haunting, supernatural, and sometimes just the plain ridiculous. I'm your host, Cody Franks, and our almost always co-host Garth is all wrapped up elsewhere taking care of a giant spider. And when I say giant, I mean like larger than Shelob, but smaller than Ungoliant. That tracks if you know what I'm talking about. Tolkien. Anyway, so instead, joining me this time in person for the first time in 117 episodes is my younger brother, Gunnar Franks. Say hello, Gunnar.
Hello.
I thought you were going to go for the obvious old joke. Hello, Gunnar.
Oh, hello, Gunnar. You can edit that in.
Yeah, I'll do it in post.
Yes.
So yeah, we find ourselves face to face for like, it's rare this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe only once since 2020.
No. Well, yeah, let's see, because I saw you for Sam's wedding.
So a wedding.
November, yeah.
But I didn't go to the wedding. I just saw you like,
no,
as
just
you
at the
stopped by.
house, yeah. And you were like, I can remember if you were sick or not, but we were like keeping our distance.
And then before that was what, New Year's Day 2020 when we recorded Spooky House.
Yeah, that was the last time face to face.
Yeah, so it's been a
yeah.
while.
Yes.
And so we find ourselves face to face at the family cabin up in the Sierras, and right now we are sitting in what used to be our grandfather's office, his work office.
He had a shop, tools. There was a train set for a while.
And it is cold outside. I think right now the temperature is hovering around 23 degrees.
I saw 17 earlier pop up on my phone.
Man, I woke up so I'm sleeping out here in the shop. You're in the house.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, last night we woke up this morning at 5 and it was 21 degrees. And
Oogie.
It's an outhouse situation, so that sucked. But yeah, so having you on here though, I was trying to think of what topic we were going to talk about. And I know you said you've cleared all this from your memory, which is unfortunate because I chose it because it's a thing that used to be near and dear to you.
I don't even know what it is. I don't know what a lighthouse does.
Well,
like,
we're talking,
is a house made of light?
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, so we're talking about lighthouses. Are they houses that don't weigh anything? They're very light.
Very light houses.
Very light houses.
It's the new trend. You got tiny houses and you got lighthouses.
Yeah, right. Well, I think the tinier the house, the lighter the house.
Could be, yes. Yeah.
Unless it's some kind of weird, is it made out of black matter?
Well, that'd be a heavy house, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it can still be tiny. It's a dense house.
Dense house.
Dense
house, lighthouse, tiny house.
Yes. Houses. But for a while you were doing a sketch a day on Tumblr.
Yes. So to keep my sanity while I was away at a work trip.
Diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
Yeah, diplomatic mission to Alderaan. Because I used to draw a lot, and then I kind of, before I was in the military, I used to draw under different... What's the term I'm looking for?
What do you mean?
Like, I want to be myself.
Oh, a
I
pseudonym. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Artist name.
Mental pseudonym.
Oh, you mean like a personality?
No. I wouldn't be drunk. I don't want to incriminate myself.
Oh, an altered state.
Altered state, yeah.
There we go.
And,
okay.
I can't do that. So, usually when I get really tired or bored, I kind of meet that same mental state. And so what I was doing was I started doodling. So once a day I would do a random doodle, whether it was good, whether it was bad, just something to kind of get those creative juices flowing. And I did that once a day. So I was gone for 97 days, and I think I didn't start until like a month in. And so once a day I did a different doodle. And then for a while I started posting them. And then one day I drew a lighthouse.
Yes.
Yes, and that's when I realized that, you know what, lighthouses rock. And so I started doing lighthouses. It went from daily doodles to daily lighthouses. And
Yeah, and to the point where then there was a thing on our Discord that tried to gaslight me, where everybody was implying that, because for a while you were like, this is not a lighthouse, or was a picture of something else, and there'd be a lighthouse in the background.
so no, what happened was I realized I fucking hate drawing lighthouses. Every day I tried.
They rock, and they're on rocks, but they suck.
Yeah, because I did at first it was like regular lighthouses, and then I'm like, well, let's go out of the box a little bit. So I did what would a lighthouse be like in space, where it's like in an asteroid belt, and the ships had to produce their asteroid belts, and you got let's say one big asteroid has a lighthouse attendant that lives there, and a bunch of the big asteroids have little beacons on them, and he maintains the beacons, and it's for ships to get through these seas of rocks. So I did that, and then one was like a weird lighthouse on some sort of Alp landscape where there was a flying ship going through, and
fantasy
to skim through high mountain ranges. And then I did one that was an oasis in a vast desert, and then it was
so lighthouses. We're getting the point.
lighthouses. And then I'm and then I did my favorite one is the giant hermit crab that is wearing a lighthouse. Yeah, and but I'm no, fuck lighthouses, man. I was I'm tired of trying to come up with different ones, and so I started drawing, just going back to regular random doodles. But yeah, I started hiding every single one.
Had a lighthouse.
And some of them are so lazy. Some of them because I was fuck, how am I gonna hide a lighthouse in this? And then I was
or how about really close up? It's the brick on the side of a lighthouse. I know this is a lighthouse.
Yeah, I did one where one day it was the base of a lighthouse, and then
the next day was the top half.
No, it's next day it was something different, and then the day after that was the middle half, and then I did eventually the top half. And then the final day, because I knew I was going to be coming back home, and I was I don't know if I'm going to keep this up, so I'm going to take a break. But, what better way to make it seem I'm not taking a break, but to make it seem like something has happened. And so, I made a little GIF that transforms into the lighthouse of those three pictures all stacked on top of each other to become one lighthouse. And just, random gibberish to make it seem the lighthouse has killed me, and,
Yeah.
And then I just actually haven't gotten back to it. So that's where it left off on Tumblr.
Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, lighthouses. That was the only thing I could think about to talk about with you. Which is funny because last time we talked about a spooky house.
We did.
And now we're going to talk about lighthouses that are spooky. Okay. That's a great way to segue into a little brief discussion that we're going to have before we get into lighthouse history. Why are lighthouses spooky, or a good setting for spooky things?
I mean, typically, they're by themselves.
Yeah, isolated.
They're isolated. They're usually ran by maybe one person, almost like a fire watch, where
fire lookout towers.
They lack other human contact and stuff, and so that's kind of spooky. You're all by yourself out there in nowhere, and they're usually
and the sea is creepy.
Oh yeah, and you're on areas that usually have, let's say, high fog, or
why else will there be a lighthouse there?
Rocks, a lot of rocks.
Yeah, so a lot of people have probably already shipwrecked there and died there already. So there's already a haunting aspect to it. I think the isolation is the main. I think that's the reason you said you had to start sketching lighthouses, because you need to occupy your mind.
Yeah,
but think about
called to me.
Yeah, just being out there.
They were a beacon, and I was drawn to them like a moth.
Okay, so we're kind of operating on the role of a lighthouse being a safety beacon that warns people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of navigation. Watch out, don't come too close to here because it's dangerous. However, the earliest lighthouses did not seem to have that function in history. They were they were navigational, because we're talking about 5th century BCE.
Well, it could be a beacon, hey, come over this way.
Exactly.
This is where there's inhabitants, there's people.
So we're talking a time before people are there's shipping that's going on in the Mediterranean. It seems where this starts. So around Greece, we're still
olive oil.
We're still pre-Rome, but this is the classical Greek Bronze Age is probably, I think, some of the first ones. And it was that people were navigating by and large by sticking within sight of land. They don't have an idea of longitude and latitude. That comes way later. So the first lighthouses actually were just fires that were lit on top of hills along the coast, kind of like the beacons of Gondor.
Yeah.
The beacons of Minas City! The beacons are lit! Gun knuckles for 8!
And the whole point was that you could follow these to navigate to harbors
Yeah.
and cities and trade ports. So you're like, okay, well, I know that if I just sail in that direction for like 3 days, eventually I'm going to see a light, and then I'll follow that light to the next light, and then that'll get me to the port I want to go.
Yeah.
And let's see, the first one.
I actually drew a couple, I think, that are fire-based.
Yeah. So there's actually one from India that might actually be the oldest in the world. It is Kuntasi, and it might be associated with the Indus River Valley civilization. And so we're talking about like 2000 BCE.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because the Indus Valley, that's like one of our earliest, when you say that's a civilization. Like, you can't deny, like, they're doing shit.
Yeah.
So they might have had it's debatable of whether or not it was a lighthouse, but it seems to be. That's what it is. And then according to Homer, the first lighthouse was invented by a guy named Palamedes of Nafplio.
So Simpsons did it first.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's like in a myth, because the Homer stories, that's like the Trojan War and stuff, which, we know that there was a Troy at one point. But the first one that we can actually like say definitively, like, there's historical records that last into more of a modern era, and we can say, no, like, this is for real, and that is the Lighthouse of Alexandria.
Okay. Well, real quick, I feel like we would know if lighthouses were real with Homer, because then Odysseus probably wouldn't have gotten lost.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if there had been enough lighthouses, he would have been fine. But yeah, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, or the Pharos of Alexandria, was one of the 8 wonders of the world. The classical world. Wait, I have to retake. I said 8. It's 7 wonders of the ancient world, not 8. There's the 8th wonder of the world. That's Jeff the Mongoose. We all know that. And it was built, I believe.
Yeah, Alexandria, they had a lot of stuff, didn't they? Wasn't the library also?
Well, yeah. But there's a lot of Alexandrias. But this
Is that how they caught on fire from the lighthouse?
No. And actually, the burning of the Library of Alexandria.
You guys actually covered that, didn't you?
No, but I think I may have mentioned, but there wasn't. It's not actually a literal, like, there wasn't a light. It didn't get burnt down in the way everyone thinks it happened.
A cow kicking over a lantern.
Yeah. O'Leary's cow. So this is Alexandria in Egypt, founded by Alexander the Great. But it's one of the many.
Weren't they all?
Yeah, were they all great? Not all Alexanders were great, but Alexander the Great made a lot of Alexanders.
Yeah, Alexandria the Great. That's his middle name, and then.
So the Lighthouse of Alexandria was constructed originally sometime between 284 and 246 BCE.
Okay.
And it lasted until the 1300s.
Wow.
Yeah. It was knocked over by an earthquake. But or at least part of it was still up at that point. It was, the height was about 387 feet high.
Wow.
And it had a big old fire at the top. And it was at the entrance to the harbor.
Yeah.
Alexandria. The Romans started building them. They started to spread into Western Europe with the Romans. And there's a few Roman-built lighthouses that are still around. There's one in Spain. And there's one that is in Dover Castle in Kent in England, overlooking the English Channel.
Okay.
Part of the castle is a little like round turret building, a tower, and that was a lighthouse the Romans built.
Okay. Yeah,
they're navigational tools, but then as we move further or closer to our time, they become more of a safety thing because shipping, especially when you get, the New World in the Americas, there's a lot of Atlantic shipping going on and there's a lot of dangerous, there's shoals and reefs and rocks out there.
I actually saw a map earlier this week, and it was the East Coast, and it was of all these shipwrecks, of these Spanish galleons, all this stuff, right? And they were right up on the coast, and I'm like, they made it all the way across the Atlantic Ocean just to sink right there.
Well, it's a known fact that you're
they're also
closer to land now, so they're probably the the occurrence of these
Yeah.
submerged rocks
Yeah.
when you get closer to the continental shelf are probably higher. But also, most car accidents happen within a few miles of your home.
Yeah.
You know,
Right there.
you know where a place actually has like the most lighthouses, or it used to?
Oh, actually, yeah, it's
It's a state.
hold on, because I expunged all my knowledge.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Michigan.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
it's,
state of
the
Michigan.
Great Lakes.
Yeah, because it's got what, 3 Great Lakes starting it.
Because West Coast has more than East Coast, and then Michigan has more than both.
Yeah. Michigan, had a crazy number.
I mean,
There's a whole Joe Parra episode
it
about
was a
It's great.
craze. You know, it was like you weren't cool unless you had a lighthouse.
Surrounded by 4 Great Lakes, Michigan has more lighthouses than any other state.
The Michigan lighthouses had their heyday. Like they were most prominent starting after the Civil War through 1920. And then in the 1920s and into the 30s, a lot of lighthouses globally became automated. And so the time of having a lighthouse keeper who had to tend it kind of went away because a lot of them were electrified, and then they just automated them. But we're going to talk about 2 specific lighthouses with some spooky occurrences. The first one we're going to talk about.
Just going back, when you're trying to give me a hint on where the most lighthouses were, like, give you a hint, it's a state.
Yeah,
It could be California. It could be
Yeah,
New York.
1 out
It
of
is a
50.
state.
Yeah.
yeah. 1 out of 50 chances.
I mean, well, there's some you could rule out.
Yeah.
North Dakota? No. Utah?
Yeah.
Maybe on the Great Salt Lake. I don't know. Okay, so this is, we're going to go to the year 1800. This is the story of the Smalls Island Lighthouse tragedy. And when I say Smalls Island, it's a small island. Okay, so
Like, it's very, like,
it is it's a
breaching that definition.
yes, of island. It is a tiny speck of rock that barely rises above the level of the
Yeah.
ocean, on like a calm day. And there's a little like reef or a reef of other similar rocks around it that makes that one spot dangerous. And it is 20 nautical miles off the coast of Wales, the west coast of Wales. There's nautical miles and land miles. One's wetter. You might know this. You should know. Do you
I
know this?
actually,
Come on, Mr. Military.
because when I was on my work trip, we
Yes.
worked a lot more with nautical miles.
A lot of
than we
seas
did
in
land miles.
Alderaan. You didn't know that because I never showed it to you.
Yeah. I honestly can't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Yeah.
didn't bother.
But I
looking
mean,
it
I
up.
know stuff like, mean sea level, and then the whole like most of the time when
Nautical
you're talking
twilight.
about elevation, you're talking about elevation above sea level and all that jazz. And
So anyway,
height above ellipsoid.
so it's always it's been a very dangerous spot for shipping, and so in 1775, someone
year.
decides
Good year.
we're going to build a lighthouse on one of these little islands, well, the Smalls Island, and we're going to put that up there so it makes it safer. However, this is not the tall stone tower that you might associate with your stereotypical mental image of a lighthouse. This was
Breaching that definition of lighthouse.
Yeah. So what this was a scaffold of sorts made out of 9 heavy English oak logs that were then anchored to the rock. On top of this, they built a little shack. And on top of the shack was the actual light itself. They chose oak over cast iron. They were going to do cast iron, but it was too costly at the time. I mean, this is 1775. There's about to be a revolution in the colonies, and so all that bog iron from the Jersey Pine Barrens, that's out. But English oak was known to be fairly durable. You're building ships out of it, so they knew it could handle marine conditions. But it's also like really pliable and bendy. So they built this little shack, and they built the scaffold in a way so the idea was that waves would just pass through like a wharf, like a pier. It's a wharf, right?
Yeah.
But it also means that shack sways with the
Bendy.
waves.
Very
It bends.
bendy.
Yeah. So it wobbles. So yeah, most times though you can't even tell that there's an island there at all. It just looks like there's a little shack on some posts that just rises out of the sea. Your Legend of Zelda Wind Waker situation, where you're sailing out there and then suddenly there's a post with a little pirate thing on it.
Yeah,
it's that.
It's the it's the loading distance.
Yeah. Out in that mist, that Nintendo mist. So yeah, it's out in the Irish Sea, 20 miles out. So in 1801, the lighthouse was operated by a 2-man crew. A crew of 2 men was traditionally the norm for British lighthouses, and as we're about to find out, that was probably not the best idea. At the time we're talking about now, though, the crew consisted of 2 guys named Thomas.
Both named Thomas?
Both named Thomas. You got Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith. And it was no secret, on the mainland anyway, that these 2 men did not like each other. They often quarreled and actually came to blows, and they just did not get along. So, surely, this is just the situation you want in a tiny little, 12-foot shack on some piers in the middle of the Irish
It's immersion
Sea.
therapy. It's hopefully that they can,
Yeah, work it
overcome
out.
their differences and realize there's not, they got a lot in common.
Worst
I'm Thomas, you're Thomas, G comes before H in the alphabet.
worst reboot of The Odd Couple ever.
Well, they're both odd. They're both Jack Lemmon.
Jack Torrance. You have 2 Jack Torrances in the middle of the ocean. No alcohol. They're going crazy. So the weather started getting rough, and as they say, the tiny shack was tossed. But if not for the courage of the fearless crew, the lighthouse would have been lost.
Thomas and Thomas?
Yeah, Thomas. Suddenly, though, Thomas Griffith, he took ill. I'm not sure what it was, depending on which thing I read. Some said it was an accident, and then he was suddenly ill. But I think it's probably something mundane by today's standards, like appendicitis.
Oh, so it wasn't murder?
Funny you should say that. So he's very ill. This is recorded in the logs.
Got a case of the murder.
And so Howell, realizing that his colleague was seriously ill, lit the lighthouse's emergency distress beacon. So as another light on top of the lighthouse, it's like a red beacon. And when that's lit, it means shit's going down. We need help. However, with the seas being as rough as they were, and it's a tiny little rock surrounded by other dangerous rocks, even if a ship had noticed the beacon, there was no possible way they could make a landing to render aid. The seas are too wild and crazy. So after a few weeks, Griffith dies. But here's the thing. The fact that these 2 men did not get along was so well known that Howell rightly assumed that if he disposed of the body, everybody's going to assume he murdered this guy.
So he's stuck.
So he's like,
with that body.
So he says, I need to keep the body until help can arrive. So weeks go by, and the seas do not calm.
And he got along with Thomas more than he ever has.
So, yeah, nobody seemingly got close enough to even notice. And by this point, Griffith is starting to rot. And the smell was becoming nauseating. Not to mention just the psychological trauma of being inside a tiny swaying wooden shack above a tempestuously rolling gray Irish sea with the corpse of your, worst coworker in the room with you, right?
On any other day, I would love to look at you like this.
But Hal, luckily, had a previous occupation. He had been
By trade, I was a cooper, lost out to redundancy, like my house that fell to progress. My trade's a memory.
You know that song?
No.
The Rare Old Times?
Oh, yeah.
So a cooper is somebody who makes barrels.
Did he turn Thomas into a barrel?
No!
Skin barrel.
He pulls a few loose boards away from the bulkhead inside the shack.
Makes a barrel and stuff.
And he makes a crude coffin. He then puts the rotting corpse inside of the coffin, and then he lashes it to the railing around the walkway that runs around the outside of the lighthouse. So just to paint a picture of the lighthouse again, this is, it's on the piers. You have the tiny little shack. I think it's like a 12-foot kind of hexagonal shack.
God, that's...
On top of that, you have a walkway that goes out with a railing. And then in the center of that, you have the lighthouse beacon.
They lived in that.
And they lived in that, yeah. So he takes that coffin he makes and he lashes it to the railing that goes around the top lighthouse. So he's like, okay, I don't really need to see him.
Yeah.
I don't need to smell him anymore. But, okay, so this is where it gets even more disturbing. So it turns out that making a cask in a cooper's shop is a far cry from making a casket out of some loose boards you ripped out of the walls of your little sea shack. So, as the waves kept hitting this thing, eventually the coffin breaks apart.
And now there's just...
But Griffith's body
Still
is it somehow stays lashed to the railing. which means that every time Hal has to go and tend the light and keep
There he
it
is.
going, there he sees the rotting, ocean-soaked corpse of Thomas Griffith blowing and swaying with the storm, and its arms seemingly beckoning him to come join it in the void. He also at this point starts to believe that he is hearing Griffith laughing, crying, pleading, and mocking him in the howling of the wind. But Thomas Howell continued all the same to do his job, and he kept the lighthouse going and the emergency beacon lit. And as it turned out, a few folks had noticed the emergency distress beacon, but however, like I said, any ship that tried to approach, the seas were too rough. There was no way they could attempt a landing to offer any aid. But those who got close enough to the rocky reef would report, well, the light is lit, so that's okay. And there seems to be one of the lighthouse keepers up against the railing.
Beckoning, like,
Waving,
hey!
just waving to us. So how bad can it really be up there?
Weekend at Thomas's.
Thomas Howell kept that lighthouse going until the seas finally allowed for a rescue ship to make a landing and learn of the nightmare that he had endured. This, of course, would be several months later. So it's an entire, winter that he is stuck. Mm-hmm. And with the oceans being too crazy, nobody could get there.
I heard also even more disturbing is even though his rations were doubled when the other Thomas died,
he still ate
he still ate Thomas. He had plenty of food, but
Thomas English muffins, nooks and crannies.
I am the ultimate Thomas now. Thomas twofold.
You consume the other Thomas and you become Super Thomas. Okay, so months later, they show up, and it's reported that Thomas Howell was unrecognizable to those who knew him before. Mm-hmm. Because
he was actually Thomas G.
He was Super Thomas.
He, pretending to be Thomas Howell.
Yeah. Well, he'd hovered on the brink of madness for, months. Yeah, months. Keeping the lighthouse going and keeping others safe at sea, while his only companion was the rotting remains of... his only companions, the rotting remains of Thomas Griffith in the cruel Irish
Daniel
Sea.
Radcliffe.
Eventually, that oak lighthouse will be torn down and replaced with a tower made of stone, which still stands today and I think is automated.
And still has the corpse of Thomas G.
What transpired with Thomas Griffith and Thomas Howell became known as the Smalls Island Tragedy. And because of it, policy regarding lighthouses in British waters were changed. No longer would a crew of 2 men run a lighthouse. From now on, it would be 3 men. And that worked
until
pretty well.
Someone got stuck with 2 corpses.
It worked out pretty well until dig for bones.
Do you like beer?
Of course you do.
Do you like good food?
You better believe it.
Then we have the show for you.
It's the Hoppy Trails Podcast.
I'm Nick.
I'm Travis, and on each episode of Hoppy Trails, we invite you to come along on our journey to explore craft beverages and the foods that accompany them.
Check out Hoppy Trails on hoppytrailspod.com or listen wherever you find your podcasts. Connect with us on Instagram at hoppytrailspod or reach out to hoppytrailspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Come travel the Hoppy Trails with us, and remember to always say yes to the hoppy ending.
Cheers!
What was that laugh? I asked myself. I'm trying to recreate that as much as possible. I don't think I've ever laughed like that in my life. That was new. What is that? This is my new laugh for 2024. New year, new laugh.
We have a spanking new podcast for your ear holes called Doom Generation.
Available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Later, Doomers.
You gotta dig for bones first.
I'm thinking of the first movie is the 2 Thomases and the sequel.
3 Thomases. That's kind of what happened.
He thought 2 Thomases was bad this summer. 3 Thomases.
Too many kids spell the name Thomas with a 3 in it somehow. Okay. And we're back.
Those were bones. Those were some bones. Yes, they were.
Indeed.
Indeed.
You're filling in for Garth, man. You got to carry your weight.
I am the Garth now. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the Garth now.
He is. I'm looking at him. He's the Garth now. Look right into his eyes. Okay, so I teased that the new 3-man policy worked for a while, and we'll get into that in a bit. But first, the Smalls Island tragedy might sound familiar. And that's because it was the basis for, first a radio play called The Lighthouse in 2012. And then in 2016, that became a British movie called The Lighthouse. And then in 2019, an American movie starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson was made that was loosely inspired by the tragedy. Care to guess what that was called?
The Batman meets the Green Goblin.
That would have been Brad. But no, it was called
The Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse. Yeah, The Lighthouse. It's very creative.
Oh, yeah.
But now we'll move on to the next tale of lighthouse mystery and spookiness. So for 100 years after the Smalls Island tragedy, British lighthouses were adequately manned by 3-person teams until they weren't. Mm-hmm. Our next story takes place on the island of Eilean Mor in the Flannan Isles, which are in the Outer Hebrides in the North Sea, 21 miles off the northwest coast of Scotland. Next stop, Iceland, baby. So if you go fast enough, you're going to Iceland. These islands are sometimes known as the Seven Hunters. Want to guess why?
They look like hunters?
Well, there's 7 of them.
Okay.
And they take out a bunch of ships.
Oh!
They're like the 7 Hunters.
Okay,
yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. The year is 1900.
Good year.
And the Flannan Isle Lighthouse on Eilean Mor, which is the largest of the Flannan Isles. It's still pretty small. I mean, it's no Smalls Island small, but it's
definitely an island.
Yeah, this one is definitely an island. It's 38 acres in area, but most of that is sloping hillside and cliff. You know, like where Luke ended up in that awful Star Wars movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but no weird blue milk.
I didn't think that's where blue milk came from.
No, I don't.
Like, why would they have that on Tatooine?
Exactly. It wouldn't be fresh.
No, not at all.
Their
Does it curdle the same?
With their refrigeration?
Space milk.
Become blue cheese by then. Is that how blue cheese is?
Is that blue cheese?
Yeah, it's 38 acres in area, and most of that is sloping hillside and cliff. The lighthouse itself is a 75-foot tall white tower with a small stone living quarters at its base, and this is at the top of a 200-foot cliff that rises out of the North Sea. When in operation, the light would flash 2 white signals once every 30 seconds and was visible for 20 miles away. So even though the next land over is 21 miles, and that's the Isle of Lewis.
Is it nautical miles?
I think so. They are still 1 mile too far to see the light. They're like, we don't see it. I guess the curvature
of the round Earth.
Round fucking Earth. That's why we have lighthouses.
Earth.
Yeah, if the Earth was flat, lighthouses...
Hey,
you'd see them forever.
I'm a reputable government employee, and I can tell you the Earth is round, okay?
That is one thing I am authorized to tell you. The rest is top secret. So the lighthouse was approved for construction in 1896, but they did not begin building it until 1899. At the same time they constructed the lighthouse, they also... So the lighthouse was approved for construction by the Northern Lighthouse Board, who handles all the British lighthouses that was in like anywhere from the Isle of Man up through Scotland. Mm-hmm. And they approved the building of the lighthouse, and they also appropriated funds so that on the Isle of Lewis, the 21 miles away, they could build a house for the families of the lighthouse keepers. Because even though in the past you'd assume like, well, it's all bachelors, right?
Yeah.
The lonely, one person.
Like a fire watch.
By this point it becomes that because they rotate through, it's like a fireman. You do your little thing.
And I think like the mental stability of being able to see your family when you're off, shift, it was, the morale would be better.
But elsewhere, there's a lot of places where the lighthouse keepers' families stayed at the lighthouse with them. And so the whole family was living there sometimes on these little islands.
Strap your family up to the side and let them beckon you.
Yeah, right. So
this is my child, Thomas. My other child, Thomas.
This is my mistress, the sea. The cruel sea. So on Eilean Mor, there's only 2 spots on the island that anybody can land. There's on the western side and the eastern side. And one of them is also a very generous, saying they can land there. It is like a little shelf of rock that sticks off that's been reinforced with concrete. And there's 160 stone steps that then climb up from that point that work their way up the hill. There's also a crane that then sticks out. It can get things from boats.
Luggage stuff.
Well, it picks up stuff. And then they have a railway that from each one of the two landing sites. It's a cable-driven railway that would pull, because these are they had huge casks of paraffin oil to burn in the lighthouse. Yeah, and these things
because these aren't electric lighthouses.
No.
Yeah,
this is we're in 1900 here.
Yeah, good year.
So, let's see, your average like barrel is what, like 55 gallons, and you're what, 8.5 pounds per gallon, or is it 8? I used to know this.
What are you, a Cooper or something?
I don't know. No, that doesn't exist anymore. And the point is, these barrels are heavy, and this is a very steep hillside, so they constructed this railway to pull them up. But the lighthouse keepers, they still had to walk up steps to get up there. So, for the first year of operation, the crews were relieved every fortnight. How long is a fortnight?
Isn't it 14 days?
Yep.
Okay.
No skins. No downloadable skins. No tournaments. This is a measure of time, people. It's not one night you spend in a fort, etc. Okay, so in the beginning of December 1900, the 3-man crew on the Flannan Isles Lighthouse were as follows. James Ducat, previously of Terrak Nor, you might know it as Deep Space Nine.
Attention, Bajoran workers.
So James Ducat is the principal lightkeeper. Another Thomas, this is Thomas Marshall. Can be the same. It's been 100 years later. He might be a descendant. He's the assistant lightkeeper. And then there's Donald MacArthur, who is what they call the occasional keeper. So it's kind of like your promotion. You have like you have your principal keeper, the assistant, and then the assistant's assistant, who occasionally steps in to run it.
Assistant to the regional manager.
Donald MacArthur was actually filling in. The normal occasional keeper who should have been there was
was his name Thomas?
No, he was William Ross. He was absent because he was on sick leave. And as it turns out, that's probably one of the luckiest cases of sick leave ever. On the night of December 15th, a steamer called...
Cleveland.
No, but it was coming from Philadelphia, not Cleveland, though. The Arctur. The steamer,
kind of badass.
Yeah, the steamer Arctur, which was going from Philadelphia to Leith in Scotland. It passed by, and it noted in its log that the light was out. There was no light lit, and they said the weather conditions meant that it should have been. And when they get to Leith on December 18th, they report this fact right chain to the Lighthouse Commission, and somehow that's not passed on anywhere further up the chain of command.
Smell some funny business.
Yeah, so it's not until December 26th when the Lighthouse tender ship,
almost a whole week later,
Hesperus, arrives to resupply the lighthouse and to relieve part of the crew. So they bring like a replacement lighthouse keeper who's supposed to swap out with one of them. And as the Hesperus approaches the island, they notice that the light was not lit. So the captain, and a guy named Captain Harvey, he orders that they fire a signal flare and then to blast the horn. And usually the practice is when this happens, the lighthouse is supposed to respond. No response. So they send the relieving keeper, Joseph Moore ashore, and he then has to climb up the steps to go find out what's going on in the lighthouse. And later he would recount that he had a feeling of dread and ominousness that just overcame him oppressively as he climbed the stone steps up to the lighthouse. Years later, the poet Wilfred Wilson Gibson would write these words to describe the scene that awaited Joseph Moore. Though 3 men dwell on Flannan Isle to keep the lamp alight, as we steered under the lee we caught no glimmer through the night. Aye, though we hunted high and low, and hunted everywhere, of the 3 men's fate we found no trace, or any kind in any place, but a door ajar, and an untouched meal, and an overturned chair.
Spooky.
This, of course, is poetic license. The truth wasn't as fanciful, but it's still just as unsettling and mysterious. What Moore found was that the station was deserted. The lamp wicks had been trimmed, and the lamps were fueled and ready to be lit. The machinery was all taken care of and oiled as it should be. There was no overturned chair, and there was no meal left on the table. In fact, the kitchen was perfectly clean, but the men were nowhere to be found. There were 2 sets of what they called outside clothing that were missing. So outside clothing would be like
a raincoat.
Yeah, the work
stuff
clothes
like
that the guys wear.
That funny hat.
Yeah, when they go outside, right?
Yeah.
Work clothes. And we know specifically which 2 men wore what, because the clothing was assigned and it was kept in pegs.
Yeah.
You know, like their cubby.
Yeah,
This is
and they
my
probably
cubby.
had their name written in it.
Yeah, after the whole like Thomas and Thomas thing, like, we need to like set some boundaries. We
Like,
need
that
to,
was one of the new rules was you cannot have people the same name.
Oh yeah, right.
All together.
Are you Thomas? I thought I was Thomas. I don't know.
Are you Thomas? Am I Thomas?
So we know that Principal Keeper Ducat, who his sea boots and his waterproof. A waterproof is it's like a type of raincoat, but it's also not heavy duty.
It's more like just like
windbreaker.
Like an hour later. Yeah,
like a windbreaker.
shell.
Yeah, so a windbreaker. Because later they say that would be the akin of somebody going out in their shirt sleeves. You know, so like he was not dressed for the weather. Assistant Lightkeeper Marshall sees his sea boots were also gone, as well as his set of oilskins. So those are heavier duty, weatherproof. So it seems that for some reason the 2 men donned their work clothes and left the lighthouse. It was assumed that these articles of clothing were only ever worn when going to one of the 2 landings. So that might have been where they went, but then from where? And why is there still a 3rd man missing? That doesn't make any sense.
And all his clothes were there.
So they do look around. They realize that, we have to get the lighthouse going. So 2 crew members from the Hesperus volunteer to remain with Joseph Moore at the spooky-ass lighthouse while the ship goes back to get help. And then, they go and report what's going on. Well, they telegraph back as soon as they get ashore to the Lighthouse Commission and say, I have the actual words.
Place is spooky.
Spooky as shit. People missing. Okay, so a dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island. Stop. Rocket fired. Stop. There's no response was made. I'm not going to keep saying stop.
Stop.
We usually had to keep doing that.
Stop. Go.
Fired a rocket.
Slow down.
Too fast. I'm finished. This telegram is over. So as no response was made, managed to land Moore, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated the accident must have happened about a week ago. And then he says, we waited till night, left Moore and McDonald, buoy master, and 2 seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. And then he says that he's going to hang out at the telegraph office until it closes, waiting
thank
for
God.
response.
You're going to hang out on the island. Fuck
No,
that.
no.
I'm not going to that place. It's haunted.
So then the board superintendent, Robert Muirhead, he goes out there to start looking around and do an investigation as well. And so here's where we're going to get into some theories about what happened and some other things that are like, so what was actually found and so forth. So you will find and hear from many people retelling this story that they found in the logbooks that there were some strange things in the logs.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Can I make a guess as to what it was?
Yeah, sure.
Was it birds?
Birds do factor into one of the theories, actually.
What?
Yeah, no,
yes.
I kidding you not.
Sandhill cranes? The goddamn Mothman.
So, apparently, in the logs, it talked about how... so, the log entry on December 12th. Thomas Marshall wrote, "Severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He also said that Principal Keeper Ducat had been, quote, very quiet, and William MacArthur was crying, or had been crying, right? Then on December 13th, it said the storm was still raging, and that all 3 men had been praying. And then the final log entry is on December 15th and reads, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." But here's the thing. The people 20 miles away on the Isle of Lewis, so there were no storms on those days. Nothing was going on. There was no storm. The seas were calm.
I feel like 20 miles, though, is pretty far. You know?
Pretty far, but there'd still be like some, if there's a storm 20 miles off coast.
You still get some
I mean, you get
currents
rain there's still some stuff that happens.
Yeah, the waves would be a little shaky from there.
But these stories about these logs get brought up a lot in some of the theories about what happened. There's not a lot there, but from that people have extrapolated, well, why was Ducat quiet? And why was Marshall crying?
And why was God over all?
Well, one thing you hear people, this is a theory that's been floated, is that Ducat and Marshall were lovers. But here's the thing is Ducat had a family back on the Isle of Lewis at the, at the family quarters. And so maybe he ended the relationship and Marshall was distraught. And then maybe in some kind of weird lover's quarrel, he murdered the other two men and then flung himself into the sea.
What if...
That's a lot to extrapolate from that.
The lovers murdered the other dude and they took off and left.
Well, there's been a theory that they left a three-way. It was an all Lighthouse keeper three-way. And that
we call that a Thomas trio.
And that they faked their deaths or their disappearance and left. But here is the thing about those logs. And that is that it's a fake. There's this researcher, his name is Mike Dash, and this guy knows his shit. He is a very good researcher. He has covered a lot of very dense topics, including working for... he teaches history at King's College in London. He is a foremost expert on things like the Dutch tulip mania of 1634.
Good year.
He has extensively written lengthy tomes and books on the early years of the American Mafia. He had a blog that was published by the Smithsonian Magazine. So the guy has done he is legit. He is a legit researcher.
Too legit.
And too legit to quit. And he did some digging, and he found out that those logbooks that keep getting cited, those are made up. They're later additions to the story.
It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It never happened.
The actual log of the logbooks from the time...
Yeah, we're pretty bored. We're cutting out early.
I think we go for a swim.
We realized lighthouses were not for us.
A little late in the game. Last entries in the log, there's December 13th, and then the 14th of December, they mention the light on the 15th, which would explain why, they're getting ready to light it the next night, night of the 15th, but it didn't get lit that night.
Because that one crew came by, it was the 17th, right?
There are weather recordings. They recorded the barometer, thermometer, and wind conditions at 9 a.m. on the 15th. They're all noted. Mm-hmm. They noted that the lamp had been cleaned. It was full of oil. They had put blinds on the windows. Everything was ready to go for the next work day. And the state of the kitchen being cleaned suggests that either they disappeared on the afternoon of Saturday, December 15th. Or maybe even after dinner, they made dinner, ate dinner, and cleaned it up. But if that was that late, they would have lit the light by then. So they didn't. So it had to have been in the afternoon of the 15th, something happened. The investigation at the site from the commissioner of the Lighthouse board, Robert Muirhead, he reports they found some weird traces around the western landing, one that has the crane.
A bunch of lube. All the lube.
All the lube. So, quote, this is from the commissioner, Robert Muirhead. He's the commissioner of the Lighthouse Board. Quote, the iron railings round the crane platform and from the terminus of the tramway to the concrete steps up from the west landing were displaced and twisted. A large stone block weighing upwards of 20 CWT. What is a CWT? Hold on. That actually stands for a hundredweight. It's abbreviated CWT. It's a hundredweight. And in United Kingdom, a hundredweight is 112 pounds. So
where does the C come from?
So when he says that 100. It's 20 hundredweight stone, so that's 20 times 112. So this is a big boulder.
Goddamn.
Had been dislodged from its position higher up and carried down to and left on the concrete path. A life buoy fastened to the railings along this path to be used in case of emergency had disappeared, and I thought at first that it had been removed for the purpose of being used, but it was evident that the force of the sea pouring through the railings had, even at this great height, 110 feet above sea level, torn the life buoy off the ropes. So his guess was that
on the other side of the
that something had happened for some reason, maybe a wave or something had happened, and they went to go assess the damage. So remember I said earlier they assumed that they only wore those clothes when they went down to the landing.
Yeah.
And then here we have at the landing, there's sign that something
happened. Something was there. Yeah.
Some kind of disaster has happened here. Something from a big wave maybe had come through. And so, yeah, the conclusion of the investigation was that the men had been caught by a unexpected, what they call large roller wave, and swept into the sea. A rogue wave. But this also begs the question, like, well, the two men's clothes are missing, so why is the third man
why was
gone?
He not wearing?
Yeah, and the thing is that the protocol at the time was that no matter
one person had
always
to stay behind.
always has to be there. It doesn't matter what danger the other two in, they need to be there. But he broke protocol, so maybe it was that
they were gone. They were gone.
Yeah, they're gone, and it
went,
and then another wave got him, or they noted that up above where the landing is, there usually was a box that had a bunch of block and tackle and ropes, and that was smashed, and all those ropes were down below. So they thought, well, maybe like they knew somehow that box had gotten disturbed or broken. They were going to see what happened, and this rogue wave came, or maybe they were down there working. The Marshall's up there at the top. He can see the wave coming because he's got a higher advantage. He
tries to go warn them.
Not
enough time to put his shit on. He just
he runs down there in time to get washed out with them. Or maybe they get washed away. He's running. He trips and falls and he tumbles in. Somehow. But yeah, something. Usually these things, the answer is something very mundane, tragic, and stupid.
Something fast and tragic at an early age.
So that's probably what happened.
And a bit silly.
The other theories: foul play, like I said, the murder, the lovers' quarrel, sea monsters. So we said
we are approaching Kraken territory. Yes, he said his next stop is Iceland. So
there could be some kind of sea monster. And these next ones are the ones are coming because you'll see these all the time. But
birds?
That's actually after. Aliens. A dimensional portal. A la like the Bermuda Triangle type thing. A seaport, some kind of into the Super Sargasso Sea.
The warp.
Some other form of supernatural forces, including a giant bird.
Nice.
A giant seabird must have came and got them. But then there's this other weird theory that goes around, and this is just somebody made this thing up, and I don't think this is. So remember how I said that when the guy they left there to was their replacement. He's climbing the steps and he says he feels really oppressive and like something's not right. Well, that's understandable because something is obviously wrong. The light is not lit. Nobody answers. So he knows he's going to find something bad. But in some versions, they'll say that he saw 3 large black birds roosted on top of the lighthouse. And so there's a theory that somehow they turned into birds. Yeah. And they flew away.
The least possible option is always the actual
least likely. It's always what's probably happened.
So they are birds.
They turned into birds.
Some say they still are.
Either way, this mystery has persisted for 120 going on 125 years.
Yeah.
124 years.
Almost to this day. It'll be 125 years in about 2.
We'll see. This
weeks.
episode is going to release on. This is going to release on the 6th. This episode's on the 6th, and so
we're doing this in
a fortnight before these guys.
Memoriam to the 3 birdmen.
Pour one out for the Flannan Isle lighthouse keeper. Like I said, Ducat. Yeah, he left behind his wife and 4 children. Yeah, this mystery has gone on for a long time. It's been written about in books, movies. But most likely it was something, a tragic accident that the men got washed overboard.
If you don't think being turned into birds is a tragic accident. Okay?
That's like I mean, that's the kind of tragic story that happens in, like, you know, a Grimm's fairy tale.
Most foul.
Yeah, so
Proud of
there
that
you go.
one.
That's and so yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started this podcast, I remember hearing another paranormal podcast that just reported the story in a way where they were like, they left no possible. It was like, there's no other explanation. There's no wave or anything. These men turned into birds. It's like, what?
You know what? I heard there's not even an ocean.
Yeah, it's just, that's crazy. But yeah, no, lighthouses, spooky.
Yeah, there's just like, there's a basic Lovecraftian, like, ooginess
Yes.
of lighthouses.
Hey, check it out.
Look at that. Innsmouth Lighthouse, Massachusetts.
Yeah, my
It's a
my
shame he
laptop
was
case.
so racist.
Oh, H.P. Lovecraft? Yeah, right. More like
Same.
Hatecraft, am I right?
Bazing.
Eat a dick, you old racist dead guy. Good stories, though.
Good stories. Great stories.
Racist as shit. Good
Racist
stories.
shit. That cat deserved better.
Oh, yeah. That unfortunately named cat. If you know, you know. What else? Yeah, so a lot of haunted lighthouses around the world. You know, chances are if it's a lighthouse, it's possibly haunted, people say.
Our grandfather actually volunteered at a lighthouse.
Yes, he did. He was a lighthouse docent at the
Santa Cruz.
Lighthouse Point in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And he used to mess with the tourists because from this point in Santa Cruz, you can look right across the bay and see Monterey.
An island.
Yeah, and the thing is, between Monterey and Santa Cruz is where the Salinas River and the Pajaro River go out into the sea, and so there's like a low point, and from that spot, from the lighthouse, it looks like Monterey is an island. So he used to tell the tourists, like, "Oh yeah, that's the island of Monterey out there." Like, well, can we get them? Well, the ferry's not running today. It's like, well, there's no ferry.
He starts charging people for tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've only been to like 3 lighthouses.
One of them was
maybe 4.
well,
so Pigeon Point,
which is supposedly haunted.
well, I mean,
Of course.
they're all haunted.
Yeah, they're all haunted.
It's like part of like you can't have like, it's a christening for a lighthouse is to become haunted.
You have to sacrifice a Thomas.
Sacrifice Thomas.
Then you get a haunted lighthouse. Appease the
but yeah,
gods.
that one, the one Papa worked at, and the one just a little bit further down on the other side, the boardwalk.
Oh, that's barely a lighthouse. It's
still
it's just
a lighthouse.
It's the entrance to the yacht harbor.
The yacht harbor. Oh, is there one at the Crow's Nest?
Yeah, it's at the yacht harbor.
Oh, yeah. The yacht harbor. Yeah, I think I've been to some other
for
ones.
Least Haunted, we...
Oh, the one from Forever Young. I want to be forever young.
What? There's a lighthouse in that?
Yeah, up in, Mendocino.
Oh, Mendocino. Oh, yeah. Oh, at the, is it the Humboldt Point or...
Yeah, something like that. Up there near Fort Bragg.
Yeah, by Fort Bragg.
In the town of Mendocino.
Forever Young. What the hell?
Yeah, Forever Young with, gosh, was it a Mad Max? Was he in Forever Young?
Oh my God, I forgot about that movie. I forgot about that completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mel Gibson is in a cryogenic pod.
Yeah.
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 And then
That's the only
Frodo
thing
Baggins
sci-fi of that movie is
I
the
think
cryogenic
and
pod.
Frodo Baggins thaws him out, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Frodo Baggins thaws out Mad Max.
Yeah.
And then he falls in love with Frodo's mom.
Uh-huh.
Who I want to say was Andy McDowell. Wait.
It was the 90s.
It was the 90s.
Probably Andy McDowell.
Probably Andy McDowell. That woman, a lot of bad things happened to her.
If I was a betting man.
Forever Young.
Forever Young.
Oh wait, who is it? Oh, I'm sorry. It was Isabel Glasser. But you know who else is in that movie? We got George Wendt.
Okay.
Norm. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
My man
Scream
Walton Goggins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
Walter Goggins. Wow.
Walton. Not Walter.
Walton.
But anyway, yeah.
What year did it come
out? 1992.
Good year.
92 years after those guys disappeared.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson was in a movie about what? You think he did it?
Oh, he's one of the 3.
I don't think that's the plot of the movie at all.
Could be. Not with that attitude, is not.
Cryogenically frozen Mel Gibson. And apparently a lighthouse.
Yeah, so I've been to that one.
Been there.
Long story short, I've been to that one.
Least Haunted and the Sequoidea guys, we were supposed to... We were trying to arrange to stay in a haunted lighthouse in Crescent City, California. And the thing about this one is that you can only get to it at low tide, because at high tide it becomes an island.
Stuck there.
Yeah, stuck there. So we were trying to arrange to get stuck there overnight for an investigation, but it's run by the Del Norte County Historical Society, which is a bunch of very nice ladies. And I don't think they wanted us going there.
Yeah. Because they knew the secret.
We would be on
It was haunted.
That it was haunted.
None of you are named Thomas, right? I don't know why this is an old lady's voice, but...
Oh, Widow Jenkins. Okay, well that's... I mean, normally at this point you'd have a Garth's Corner. But Garth's not here. So I thought what we would be doing real quick, just for a little laugh, a larf, is you and I both do... I mean, you were the original Happy McAllister.
Well...
Of snake oil fame.
Yes, I'm the creator of Happy McAllister,
Yeah.
But let's face it.
I put him on snake oil.
The original Happy McAllister
is
Matthew Berry.
Is Matt Berry. Yes.
Matt Berry.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, no, when COVID started, I was running a D&D game over Zoom. The only one I've ever DM'd. And you played Happy McAllister.
Happy McAllister, yes, who was a dashing rogue.
Yeah, a rogue and a scoundrel. And would always try to con people. And so when I then came up with, I needed a fake commercial for our first Christmas
because I had brought up snake oil in the
Oh,
game.
yeah, the game,
that was one of my cons, was selling snake oil.
Yeah, selling snake oil.
Yeah.
So that was what the first Christmas special, one of the commercials was for Happy McAllister's old-fashioned snake oil. As old-fashioned spelled with an E at the end.
Yes, and you did the first ad.
Did I?
Yes, because that's
you
the
weren't
one
available.
with copium. Yeah, because I wasn't available.
Copious amounts of opium.
Copium. And I thought it was...
Which I did not know at the time was a thing that like right-wing people were talking about copium. I thought it was just making a portmanteau of
copious amount of
opium. But apparently that's the thing. So anybody who listened to that...
It actually does mean copious amounts of opium.
Yeah, well, that's what you need to do to think like that. Yeah, also women's complaints.
Well, because that's the thing is, Happy McAllister is kind of that satire on, just...
Well, it's an old-timey
man's
snake oil
man,
sale.
yeah.
It's
Like...
what was going on, in patent medicine days,
And I loved that first, in the future ones, because I'd written, I think, the second and performed the second ad, but I think I'd asked you to write it because... that first one was just so genius, and just it's exactly how he would, what he would sound like, what he would say. And I think I did 2 commercials.
And then I did one about schlongs.
Yeah.
Dicks.
Yeah, and it got to the point because I just wasn't always available that I gave.
Well, yeah, you're off in Alderaan.
Full creative property of Happy McAllister to Sequoidea.
What I figured we would do right now,
Productions.
just for fun, just a little lighthearted thing at the end. We're gonna have 2 Happy McAllisters talk to each other.
Well,
not 2 Thomases.
Because I think we also talked about how canonically there might be 2 McAllisters.
Oh, there might be 2 Happys.
Remember, they just spell McAllister different. One has 2 L's.
It's a franchise.
It's a real O'Neill and O'Neill situation.
Yeah, 2 L's.
2 L's.
So they started off as Matt Berry impressions, and I think yours is more Matt Berry. But I think you add a little dash of somebody else. Mine is Matt Berry slowly verging on Jonas Venture Jr. from the Venture
I
Brothers.
do hear a lot of that.
But yeah, you combine the 2 to get... I gotta find my inline.
See, because my inline is, yes!
Oh, Toast of London.
Yes, Toast from London. In Clam Fandango. Pretty much anything Matt Berry says, Tucson, Arizona.
This is how we talk in Tucson, Arizona.
New York City.
Well, he's adding extra syllables to make fun of posh British people.
Well, yeah, he's very, his enunciation is very pronounced.
Yes, that's enunciation is pronunciation. Sometimes same thing. Okay, so then what should we have these two guys talk about? We just talked about lighthouses.
We could talk about lighthouses.
Yes, we could.
Yes.
Not a lot of snakes on the lighthouses.
The lighthouse seems to be very phallic.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm, yes.
You know, snakes are full of the phallic energy. And
If
lighthouse.
you think about it, a snake is very phallic itself.
I heard Robert Pattinson hangs dong in The Lighthouse, and they do a shot where they juxtapose, they crossfade from the lighthouse to an erect penis.
Speaking
Stunt
of penises and the lighthouse, Willem Dafoe
needed
I've
his own
heard.
stunt penis. It was mind-boggling.
Too big. That I couldn't even do that in Matt Perry's. It was just too big.
You can use Happy McAllister's old-fashioned snake oil and rub it on your member, and it'll grow as big as Willem Dafoe's.
Yes. If your member is too big, you can use some Happy McAllister's snake oil to make it smaller. If your member is too small, you can use Happy McAllister's snake oil to make it bigger.
One of my favorite traits of
you say
snake oil is diarrhea. Whether you have it or you desperately need it. Let's say you need to get out of your tour of duty on the lighthouse. I can't. I have a desperate case of diarrhea.
That's an honest, I think, because we talked about it, poop time. Remember, like, if
what is this? Poop time? What?
Poop time. So it's like, you can get out of anything, because, like, everyone's had that time in their life where they just have to, like, it's coming out, right? Like, and I feel like that's a proper excuse for
Look,
a
I
lot
could
of
either
times.
stayed here flipping burgers, or I could have shit myself over the customers.
Yeah, like,
and the health department's not going to like that.
If I get pulled over,
Yeah.
and that cop comes up to me, and the first words out of my mouth are, poop time, that should be an automatic escort to the nearest bathroom. I should follow him. He doesn't follow me. I follow him, because no one wants shitty pants. And I would hope that cop has had that, a moment in their life too, where it's like,
I was going to catch a bank robber once, but poop time.
Yeah, no one's proud to shit themselves as an adult.
I was going to
sober.
I was just going to continue doing my piggy thing and, beating on helpless people but poop time.
But poop time. I was beating on you, but you said poop time, so...
Yeah, officer, stop.
Time out!
Time out!
T.O.
Poop time! All right, guys, stop hitting them. You gotta use the bathroom. I don't know if that's gonna make the cut or not.
I've been a firefight in Afghanistan, and I yelled poop time, and all bullets stopped!
One thing the Taliban respects, poop time. For some reason.
They've been there.
God, it's awful. How about our Monster Squadron Patreon producers? So, if you like what we're doing here, join us on Patreon, where you can throw some money our way, get a bonus episode. The Monster Squadron are our highest level, and they get their names read at the end of every episode. And when almost always Garth is almost always here, they get their name featured in a Garth's Corner theme song. That's not happening this time. Needless to say, our Monster Squadron patron producers are Travis Alexander.
Yes.
By Barbarian.
Yes.
Rachel Krieger.
Yes.
Tom Dahl.
Yes.
Justin Duckham.
Yes.
Kelly Flynn.
Yes.
Gunnar Franks.
Yes.
Extra yes. Carla Harrington.
Yes.
Havelock.
Yes.
Christina Hurley.
Yes.
New Jared.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Brian Lamb.
Yes.
TJ Levenhagen.
Yes.
Alicia Overton.
Yes.
Jordan Ramey. A
Yes.
different one, but the same one.
Yes.
Blue Roan.
Yes.
Setifan.
Yes.
And Tatum.
Yes.
Thank you, Monster Squadron producers. Okay, I'm gonna drop the voice. Getting old. Okay, I think that's about it. Let's see, any housekeeping. You can send mail to the Least Haunted Podcast at Least Haunted Podcast, P.O. Box 22, Redwood Estates, California, 95044. You can go to our Tumblr account where we have our Tumblr gnome uploads episode images for every episode. So there's visual aids. So if you want to see what that little shack on posts looked like, you can go there. If you want to see what the actual lighthouse keepers, the 3 guys that turned into birds, what they looked like before they were birds, we got that. You can check it out.
What they look like after they turn into birds, you can Google birds.
Just Google birds.
Google birds.
Use your imagination. You'll do the rest.
You can also, through Tumblr,
see all your old lighthouse
see all
pictures.
my lighthouse pictures, and because you follow them, so they can find you through there, right?
We'll put a link on the Tumblr.
Yeah, okay.
Tumblr Gnome's got that. You can come join us on the Discord. A lot of fun going Discord. Our Secret Santa Squatch it's too late for you to sign up now. You missed the deadline.
It's too late to sign
But,
up
if that's the kind of
now.
thing you hear about, you're like, oh man, I missed that. Well, there's next year. You stick around. But you would have found out about it if you'd been on the Discord. So go there.
Or the Patreon.
We also shouted it out on Bluesky. leasthaunted.bluesky.social. We're all on the Bluesky now. Twitter is dead. I mean, we left Twitter as soon as that fucker bought it. But we left our account there just kind of as like, a lighthouse. and that's gone. We deleted that. So yeah, go to Bluesky. There is a read-along happening on the Discord right now. We are reading Terry Pratchett's Hogfather. And then we're going to watch the Sky One TV adaptation of Hogfather, I think around Christmas Eve or sometime in there, or on the solstice, one of those two. Check with the Discord. We'll let you know. I think that's all the housekeeping.
Can I make a plug?
Yeah, what's your plug?
So obviously my art on Tumblr, which I don't know if I'll ever get back to. If I do, it'll still be
What's
on
the
Tumblr.
name on there?
That is Daily Doodles.
Okay.
And then also I'm on Instagram under, I believe, just my name, Gunnar Franks. And I've been doing a lot of miniature painting.
Oh yeah, you're painting miniatures.
Yeah, it's becoming my new outlet for my ADHD, and who knows, we'll see. I'll post finished pictures up there, and maybe eventually that'll be
what you're doing.
Yeah, do something for me, a little income or something.
Paint little lighthouses.
Yeah, the smallest lighthouse.
The smallest miniature lighthouse.
The lightest house.
Yes, going full circle. They're light, they're tiny, not dense.
Not dense.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think so. Next, after this episode, our next one, it might be time for the holiday special, which I have not written yet. We're recording this on November the 29th, and I still have to write, record, produce, all that. So that's gonna be fun. Tune in to find out what that's gonna be. And otherwise, what? You have an idea?
Do I get to do the thing?
What thing? Oh yeah, you get to do the thing.
I get to do the thing?
You get to do the thing. I don't think we were doing the thing the first time you were here.
No, I don't think we were doing the thing.
Yeah. So Spooky House is episode 3 of this
and it was
show.
the second one recorded.
But it's the second one recorded.
Yeah.
And that was when you were living in El Paso.
El Paso,
that was
Texas.
New Year's Day 2020.
New Year's Day.
Well, okay. So we're gonna do the thing.
The thing.
Yes. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. And until next time, remember, the only thing that's haunted
is you.
Give it a little more energy. Do it louder.
Is you.
Yeah, I think you got it. All right.
Say goodbye.
Though the last U.S. lighthouse was automated in 1998, I've always dreamt of being a keeper, especially during the golden age of American lighthouses that lasted from 1853 to 1928. What other profession comes with a tower and nearby water to look at and daydream?
The Least Haunted podcast is recorded before a dead studio audience and is a presentation of Sequoidea Productions, LLC.